So welcome to Attachment Style Dynamics. This section is where we're going to look at what actually shapes the way that we attach to others. And this is going to be about the most sort of general container that gives us the most amount of information about a relationship dynamic, kind of that then sets the tone for everything else. So this is a really important topic. So what is an attachment style? The term comes from the work of John Bowlby, a British psychologist who first observed that the way that infants bonded with their caregivers shaped their emotional development and future relationships. Then later on there was Mary Ainsworth, who expanded on this with what they called the strange situation study. It was a famous experiment that revealed clear patterns in how children responded to separation and then the reunion with that parent. So they took the children away from their mums for a short period of time, and then they watched how the child behaved when they returned. So some children were very upset, they would cry when they would see mum, which is actually really, really normal. But it's how some children would stay very upset for a really long time, as if that really upset them. Other children would calm down very, very quickly, and other children would isolate and would kind of almost give the parent the cold shoulder and not want to engage with the parent for quite a long time. And then there were some children that seemed to kind of be confused in their sort of approach. They would sometimes do one and sometimes do the other. And what they found as a result of that was that the emotional tone set in your early relationships, usually in the first 3 years of life and often with your main caregiver, lay the groundwork for how safe, secure and lovable and important that you feel in adulthood. It also shapes the way you show up in all of your relationships. Now, of course, you have an early caregiver, which predominantly will be a very important attachment for you, attachment figure, which could have created your main style. But if there were other adults in your early childhood, you may have several ways of attaching depending on the person that you're attaching to. So sometimes we'll resonate with one of these when we think about somewhere we've been in, and then we might think, but I've been the opposite of that in a different relationship where there was a different type of person, because we tend to be able to take in the scripts and the survival skills to deal with and attach to different types of people, obviously. So there might be your main attachment style and then sort of the less important attachment style. So you might recognise more than one of these from your past. So there's 4 main types that we talk about. So the first one is secure. The second one is dismissive avoidant. The third is anxious preoccupied, and something known as fearful avoidant is the fourth. Now each style, and remember there's a spectrum obviously, so we're not saying you're in that box and that box alone. There are flavours, let's say, and you might resonate with one predominant flavour. But each style has a set of core beliefs and some typical behaviours and some complaints that they tend to make that when I'm working with couples I see almost immediately. So I can get a sense of, okay, what attachment style you are very quickly when we look at the relationship and the dynamic between you. And that's helpful because it gives us a real sense of, we've seen this before. This is very common attachment style dance. Does it feel like this? Does it feel like this? And the relief that people feel when you list out to them what they're probably experiencing and they're like, oh my God, I'm not going mad. Yes, that is what I'm experiencing. And suddenly, rather than the two of you tearing each other apart, it becomes, this is a dynamic. This is kind of outside of ourselves. This is something that's happening because of something that happened a long time ago. We are both in this pattern, and it's such a relief. It is so helpful for couples to see this pattern as something that lots of people go through. It's not just, your partner's being mean. It's a dynamic, and that's really, really, really useful. So I hope you have the same experience as we go through this. Now, there's something called protest behaviour. So when each style becomes dysregulated, i.e. the attachment is insecure, or they feel like the attachment is insecure, they will display different protective behaviours that are designed to re-establish connection or regain significance or seek safety. So obviously there are, you could have a number of different behaviours designed to do these things, but when your attachment insecurities raise their head, how we respond to try and get back to safety and connection and feeling important, those are called protest behaviours, and they are entirely neurological. There is very little that you can do in the moment consciously to soothe that, and this is where compassion for your partner comes in, because they really aren't trying to be mean. They really are dysregulated, and it's being able to see it is the first step, and being able to acknowledge that this person is dysregulated, and their method to become regulated again neurologically has always been this method since they were a tiny baby. It is not, they're not doing it to hurt you, they're not doing it to upset you, they're just doing it because they want to essentially survive. Their body doesn't realise that they've grown up and they have lots of other options available to them. This is what their blueprint is telling them to do. So let's have a look at the securely attached. So the core beliefs of a securely attached individual would be: I am worthy of love, safety and respect. Others are generally reliable and trustworthy. So they've not really had a lot of experience of people not being reliable and trustworthy. So they're not naive, but they don't have any reason to look for it, And as the self-fulfilling prophecy goes, because they don't expect it, it's not in their environment, they don't tend to attract it. Emotions are natural and manageable, so they're not afraid of your emotions. You're quite welcome to have emotions around them, and they see you as having every right to have the emotions that you're having without the need to make it mean anything about them. So they can tend to be more compassionate, and other people's moods are not my responsibility. So those kind of people pleasery behaviours that you might have, or oh gosh, that person's in a mood, I want to stay away from them. The securely attached person will just understand that, okay, yes, sometimes we get angry, that's okay. You might want to blame me, but doesn't mean to say it's my fault. You're entitled to your reaction. Things that you might see a securely attached person doing in a relationship: expressing needs and emotions, that's fairly reasonable and rational. They definitely know how to set boundaries, and they're okay with your reaction to their boundaries. They happily give you support. They're often a really great person to help you through what you're going through, because they don't need to make it mean anything about them. And often they'll recover very quickly from relationship stress. So these would have been the kids that, when they're in this experiment, when their mum came back, they would have been a little bit upset, but then regulated really quickly and gone back to playing and been fine. So we're all headed, that's the key, is that we're all trying to get to securely attached. That's what we would like. And the work that you do on this course, the work that you do on your self and your blueprint is all aimed at helping us become securely attached, or more securely attached. So the second style that we'll look at right now is anxious preoccupied. Now this is ultimately the child where you would have felt, if this is you would have felt that most of the time when you had connection with your caregiver, it was pleasant. So it would have been lovely, but inconsistent. So often when it was there, it was great, but maybe long absences. If it was mum, she just wasn't there an awful lot. She was away, or she went back to work really early. And, if you went to a nursery or something and you didn't enjoy it, and you didn't feel like there was one person to look after you, you might have felt very, very anxious that you just wanted her to come back. and sort of constantly looking for that reassurance that somebody's going to be there and stay there. And I think this is critical of the anxious preoccupied, is there's this huge abandonment wound where you just want someone to reassure you that they're going to be there for you and they're never going to leave you and it's all going to be okay. And it doesn't mean to say that you didn't have a difficult relationship with the caregiver. It just means most likely that when it was good, but it was either inconsistent or there was obstacles in the way. Maybe mum had other things going on a lot of the time, or a lot of siblings where she couldn't give you the full attention. I know from my personal experience, my sister was born, I had an older sister, but my younger sister was born when I was 2. And when I look at my 2-year-old or my near 2-year-old, I can't imagine how she would react to me giving all my attention the way that you have to give a newborn attention. She would not be okay with it. She would exhibit quite a lot of protest behaviour and she would feel utterly abandoned. So if that's what you've been through, then you probably, you want your caregiver's love and attention, but it always feels like there's something, that they're pulling away from you, or you just can't hold on to them. So the core beliefs that are formed from this attachment style often are, but not exclusive, I'm only lovable if I work hard for it. There's this real sense with anxious attached individuals where there's a real effort to do everything right. So it's almost a bit like, if I'm just the goodest girl or boy, they'll come back and then they won't leave me again. Maybe I did something wrong, and if I don't do anything wrong, they'll stay. There's a real effort that comes with anxious preoccupied attachments where this partner will often be able to list a million things that they're doing right in the relationship, and they feel quite upset that it's not reciprocated. There's a level of effort where they're really trying, but they do believe that they need to do something to be loved. If they're just enough, they'll be loved. They feel like they could be abandoned at any minute. Obviously, that's the extreme. It could just be, I find it really hard to hold on to people. People leave me, or they always want time away from me. This is a big one. Your needs might overwhelm or push people away. So it's often this feeling of like, I'm too much. Like, I'm just too much. Now, I can imagine that as a 2-year-old, when my sister was being breastfed or something, I would have been like crawling over my mum, trying to get her attention. Like, me, it's about me. And I can well imagine my mum being like, stop being so dramatic, or go away, go and play with your toys. I've got to do this, and getting quite cross with me and make me feel like I'm too much. I have to be quiet, or I have to be helpful. Maybe I felt, maybe if I can bring her whatever she needs, she'll love me. The typical behaviours that you might see, so this varies, but it could be clinginess, fawning, which is absolutely like, I just won't complain. I won't say anything that I feel. I'll do everything right. I will people please. I'll give them everything. I'll give them a reason never to leave me, as if I can make them need me. If I can give them everything, they've got no reason to leave. Huge sensitivity to rejection. Even somebody just wanting to spend time on their own is felt deeply as rejection, as, why would you need time away from me? Why would you not want to be with me? And often we see this in, I have young children, so I see this in them, that even when you've spent the whole day with them, literally every minute of the day, the moment that you disappear to the toilet or something, it's like, why would you go without me? Why would you? There's never enough. They're like, I've hardly seen you all day, mummy. And you're like, I'm right here. I've been here all day. And, there's an element of young children that's just never enough time with you, and everything is egocentric, so everything is your fault before the age of 7. So if mum leaves you, it's because you did something wrong. So often overanalyzing situations. The protest behaviour can be very critical or blaming the partner for abandoning them, and it doesn't help that often the anxious preoccupied, individual will choose a partner who does a lot of abandoning. So they'll choose somebody who needs a lot of space and is quiet and needs time alone. And because of that, it's very easy to say, look, relationships are supposed to be like this. Look, it's proven that you're supposed to spend time together. Why don't you want to spend time with me? And you can become quite indignant, as well as pointing at all the list of amazing things that you've done and wondering why they don't appreciate any of them. And this can be, the anxious preoccupied can be quite the complainer. And if this is you, often your relationships will have been brilliant, and then suddenly, like, you've met this amazing person and suddenly they do something that disappoints you, upsets you, and you criticise them, and then that's it. And then you're going on that roundabout, on that merry-go-round forever. They feel blamed and attacked, and you feel abandoned and rejected. So these are very typical behaviours of anxious preoccupied. Really difficult boundaries, because obviously you're desperate for that person to stay. So often that you compromise a lot of your values in order to get the safety and love that you're wanting. So when you should really set boundaries and say no, often there's a fear that, well, you might do this with your friends as well. If your friends say, oh, will you help me move house? You don't want to say no, because you don't want them to leave you. You don't want to give them any reason to reject you. And of course that ends up with, quite a burden. But yeah, that fear that, oh, I don't want to push people away. But the protest behaviour inevitably does as well. So it's a bit of a conflict, that one. Now, here's the dismissive avoidant, which is kind of the antithesis of the anxious attached. Okay, so this is the child that when the parent came back from the experiment, the child would be, playing there with their blocks in the corner and wouldn't give their parent a second look, and would probably intentionally ignore them. And the dismissive avoidant is ultimately someone who has said, right, the best thing I can do is just, look after myself, because to be needy just doesn't do me any favours. So it's often something that happens in a very emotionless house where everybody's a little bit cold and not very sympathetic, not very loving, not very expressive. There's no demonstration to these individuals of how a loving relationship looks, where a parent meets the needs of a child. That's often something they're quite starved of, so they've never seen it. They've been very much taught to be resilient, independent, and if you wait for other people to help you, then you'll be waiting a really long time. You should know the answer to this, having to grow up before they should, really. And it creates an adult with a very small capacity to meet other people's needs, and often a very sort of low tolerance for big emotions. If other people are having big emotions, they don't know what to do with their own emotions, so they're not going to know what to do with yours. And so they often repress their emotions and don't fully express themselves. They very much those sort of quiet, stoic people that just cope by themselves. Now, the internal world of a dismissive avoidant is far from stoic and quiet. Quite often, the dismissive avoidant has exactly the same attachment wound as the anxious preoccupied. They are both insecurely attached. They both felt the absence of a parent. They both felt the absence of love and connection and reassurance when they needed it. The difference is in the approach and response to that. So for the dismissive avoidant, ultimately they suppressed the need for connection, and the anxious preoccupied individual overtly went out of their way to try to reconnect. The dismissive avoidant shut down, the anxious preoccupied chases, right? Screams at the, at the door for mum or dad to come home. The dismissive avoidant says, great, I'm on my own, I better just get used to that, and I better have all the answers myself and look after myself and be self-contained. So these are, and in research, this is what was found, was that, again, that when the dismissive avoidant and anxious attached individual felt kind of unsure in their relationships, they both felt anxious, but you had to distract the dismissive avoidant to be able to get them to feel those feelings. So what they found was that the dismissive avoidant was consciously holding those feelings at bay. So in response to the understandable anxiety of disconnection, they repressed that feeling and became more independent. So both individuals are experiencing anxiety, but they're handling it in very different ways. So often with the dismissive avoidant, you will find people who have a lot of anxiety, but they never ever show it. They cope by themselves. They're often really afraid of failure, of being defective, and their beliefs are that I can only rely on myself. Needing people is really dangerous because, they would look at somebody, a child screaming on the floor for mum and dad to come back, and they would think, well, you better sort that out by yourself because nobody's coming. Like, if you just sit there and wait for somebody else to come, you could starve to death. You should take care of yourself. They would think emotions are a burden, so nobody wants their emotions, so they've learned to push them aside, minimise them or hide them. Why can't you do the same? The other common things I hear is this sort of, nothing I do is ever good enough. It wouldn't matter. And this is where you see a lot of passivity. So in an anxious, preoccupied individual, you'll see a lot of effort making to try and figure you out and be the best partner possible. Even if it's not what you want, they will still be able to point to a list of things they've done for you and how much they're doing and how self-righteous they feel in all the things they've done for you. And the dismissive avoidant often can't point at a list of things that they've really done for you because they've learnt that actually it's safer not to. It's safer just to look after yourself. It's safer to remove yourself. There's nothing that you could do that would help, that would work, that would get you the love that you're after. So why bother? There is this real futility in them that makes them not try. And it's so sad because in a relationship, you can point to it and say, you see, you're not trying. And actually they believe that, well, there's no point trying because when I do something, you still criticise it. So why would I bother? Whereas the anxious attached is taking feedback and notes and, okay, well, I'll get it better then. I'll get it until you pay me attention. So the typical behaviours that you see from the dismissive avoidant is they want to withdraw when they're stressed. If they have a problem, they don't want to co-regulate with you. They want to find safety by being alone with their problems the way they would have done when they were a child. And the important thing about that is they don't want to get blamed for having a problem. So as a child, if you had a problem, if you expressed a problem, that would have become a problem for the grown-up. So therefore, you were the problem if you expressed your feelings. So quite often people are trying to get the dismissive avoidant to share their feelings, to share their problems. And they're terrified to do that because they don't want to be rejected. They don't want to be ashamed. They don't want to be humiliated for having a problem and expressing it. So they withdraw and they try to work through it on their own, which you cannot do in a relationship completely. So they might often, if you complain about a relationship, and Nick used to do this, it always made me laugh. I would say something about the relationship and he'd say, right, okay, I'll go and work on that. And I would say, no, we can work on it together. No, yeah, okay, I'll go and work on that. I'll go and have a think about it. And it was that instinct to kind of withdraw to go and solve a problem because he didn't feel like he could have a problem and not be shamed. And luckily, we worked through that. But that instinct to run away and be alone is key for a dismissive avoidant. They will prefer independence over, it's not so much connection, but reliance. And they'll downplay all emotional needs, their own as well as yours. So yeah, they just don't know how to handle emotions. They're really scary. They often seem really stoic, aloof, cold, busy. They worry a lot. They do a lot of behaviours that can push you away. And they're not necessarily the person that you would go to for, sympathy and empathy because they've never seen anybody do it. It's not what they've learned to do. Surviving on your own, being independent, being resilient, getting up, brushing it off, ignoring it, sucking it up. Those are good, strong behaviours. And most of the time feel utterly attacked, blamed, shamed and criticised. That is the story of a dismissive avoidant's life. And it is very hard to be a dismissive avoidant even though they don't make as much noise as someone who's anxious attached, they are still suffering greatly and equally to the anxious attached. And then we come to the fearful avoidant. So this is a really interesting one because often people forget that this exists, but we also call it the disorganized attachment. And the way that you know that somebody is fearful avoidant is there's a real sense of they crave a relationship and intimacy and connection, unlike a dismissive avoidant. So often you know somebody's fearful avoidant because they have avoidant tendencies, but they do really want the closeness. They want a relationship. They want to love you. They want that, that passionate romance. They want it, but they're terrified of being hurt. And it's often come from more traumatic childhoods where the source of love was also the source of pain. And a little bit like, a child so desperate for love that they would go to the same person that has hurt them for a cuddle, so you give you an example. So if when I was little and I was in quotes naughty, my mum would be quite mean in response to that. And the times that I remember, if Dad wasn't there, because sometimes Dad was the one that was being mean and sometimes Mum was, but I remember that feeling of being so angry that she'd hurt me, being so angry that she treated me in a certain way, but desperately wanting comfort at the same time, and wanting that same person that just hurt you, sort of having to accept comfort from them because there's nobody else, and wanting to do anything to get back in, into having that comfort, but being too afraid to do so. So there's lots of reasons that create a fearful avoidant, but the signature is really someone who will be hot and heavy and then ghost you. Like the moment that there's a risk of you hurting them, they will disappear, they will ghost you, and then they'll come back because once they feel safe, they'll try and re-engage, and you're completely bewildered at this point because you don't know where you stand with them. So there's the push-pull, I want you, I don't want you, I want you, I need to run away. That's classic of the fearful or disorganized attachment. So these are the core beliefs. I want closeness, but I'm terrified to rely on it because you could take it away at any time, and then what would I do? And I'll give you the examples. Nick was very much like this, where it was he'd had a physically abusive relationship with his mum. So when we got in a relationship together, and I was just really nice to him because the anxious attached often is the more kind of demonstrative partner. And I would buy him gifts and I would say lovely things, and he wouldn't know what to do with any of it because he was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with any of this, but I really like it. And the whole time he was sort of thinking, well, if I fall for this, the moment that I fall for it and actually believe that this is real and believe that this is actually what I can have, it will change and she'll take it away and she'll hurt me. So the moment she'll sort of reel me in with these promises of, oh, I'll be so kind to you, I'll be so lovely to you. And then the moment I'm reeled in and I'm on the hook, she's going to use that to really destroy me. And that was basically his experience, that was what was going to happen. He was absolutely sure of it, that at some point it was all going to, turn around and be painful. Now, what my experience was on the other end of that was endlessly being provoked more and more by the sort of distancing behaviours of being, he would want closeness, but then kind of pull away. And the moment that my protest behaviour came out as the more anxious partner, he used that as evidence. You see, I was right not to trust you because I knew that this was coming. So And then if I pulled away and I said, I can't do this anymore, that would be when I would see the biggest shift in him. Would be like, okay, well, maybe we can work it out. And honestly, the fearful avoidant dance is really tiring, because it's in out. It's, I'm in this, no, I'm running away. It's exhausting. You never really know where you stand. They always feel like they've got one foot out the door, and it can be, it's not nice to be a fearful avoidant. They believe people always leave you in the end, or they'll hurt you. That's worse than leaving you, is hurting you. People who care for me will hurt me. People say one thing but do another. Hypervigilant for incongruence, so for liars, and they'll look for ways that you're not faithful, or you're cheating, or they'll see, they'll look for ways that you're trying to hurt them. So push-pull dynamics, all in, then they'll ghost you, but they will come back, right? Usually the fearful avoidant, if they love you, they will keep coming back, but then they'll keep ghosting you again. Hypervigilance for rejection, incongruence, or betrayal. Difficulty trusting their own instincts. So when their gut instinct is there, it's actually fairly good, but they've got such a fear response that they can't really trust themselves to be safe. Emotional reactions may seem chaotic or extreme. They are definitely the more dramatic of any of the attachment styles. Most of our movies, the really, the big romance movies, often there's a fearful avoidant in there. There's often one that's, I want it, but I'm afraid to be hurt. So they pull away, and there's communication issues. But a lot of the drama that we've been raised on, a lot of the stories have these really dysfunctional relationships in them. So because the fearful avoidant is drama, but it's passion as well. So there is a lot of drama and a lot of passion, which, rather than the dismissive avoidant, where there's just not a lot of feelings there. So there might be a lot of upset, but the fearful avoidant will often be way more of a passionate relationship. Here are some of the complaints that you'll hear. The secure, I want to work this out together. I expect to have a mature relationship. The dismissive avoidant, oh, you're too much, you're too needy. Nothing I do is ever good enough. This is the classic phrase is, oh, what have I done now? That's a classic dismissive avoidant phrase. The anxious preoccupied, oh, you don't prioritise me, you don't spend time with me, you abandon me, you never want to spend time with me, you don't love me, you don't care about me. And the fearful avoidant, I can't trust you, I never know where I stand, if you get too close you'll hurt me. All right, so to finish this section off, I think it's really, really important that you see some examples of these attachment styles that you probably already seen in your life and thought nothing of them. It's very easy when you see dysfunction to recognise dysfunction, because it's dramatic and so on. But it's harder to recognise dysfunction when we've been raised on this dysfunction. So I think if I introduce you to the notion of Prince Charming and Cinderella, and I see a lot of couples that are this dynamic. So when we think about Prince Charming and Cinderella, now obviously Cinderella, raised by her stepfather dies, her mother dies, then her stepfather dies, and she's left with this stepmother and these two sisters. She feels completely displaced. She is shamed and made to work, for them, as that's the only way that we would have you around. So in a very cold environment, she learns to be self-reliant. She basically becomes dismissive avoidant. And so independent, strong, resilient, but ultimately underneath she would feel insignificant, worthless, shamed, and a kind of deep unfairness about life. Now let's think about Prince Charming. So on the surface, he's charming, he's great. What's he got to complain about? Surely he would be secure. But let's think about this in more depth. His parents want him to marry for duty, and he wants to marry for love. And we're all like, yeah, marry for love. But he's been raised to not think love is important, but he knows it's important. So he's desperate. Maybe his parents were away doing their duties a lot, and he just wants somebody who's there for him. He has fantasized about having somebody to love him his whole life. He doesn't want to marry somebody who's for duty. He wants somebody to love him. And when you look at Prince Charming, instead of seeing this secure individual, what you're seeing is somebody who's desperate to find a wife, to find somebody to love him. Now, Cinderella's fairy godmother comes along and she says, well, there's this ball and you get to go to that ball. I will dress you up, make you look as if you are a princess. Nobody will know anything. Everybody will think you're what you want to be. They won't see the shame. They won't see that version of yourself. We'll hide it. And we will get you to the ball. And she walks into the ball looking amazing. And she's been told that, don't let anybody, don't stay beyond midnight, otherwise they'll find out all about you. So she walks into the ball, she's having the best time. And the prince does the most anxious attached thing you can ever imagine, which is to take one look at her and decide he's going to marry her. This is the most anxious attached thing you can do. Because often they have this sort of, and I say they, but I mean we. I'm a recovering anxious attached, so I can say this, but that fantastical notion of relationships where within 2 minutes you're like, okay, this is the person I'm going to marry. This is the person I want. It's the little chick, imprinting on the first person it sees. They do that really quickly. They get into relationships, and he's obsessed with her, and he's decided he's going to marry her, even though he's only talked to her for 2 minutes. And in that time, she's been actually very cagey, actually very cold, and not given anything about herself. She's not told him anything. She's very intentionally kept everything very private. He's imagined all of it. And then she runs away because, I don't want you to find out who I really am. I'm going to run away. I'm going to shut down. I'm going to withdraw, isolate. The dismissive avoidant classic. And he literally scours the country looking for her, to find her. He will not rest until she is brought back. Has no intention of giving her any space. Literally, I'm going to go and claim you. I'm going to go and have you. And, does the shoe fit? Great, yeah, you'll do. You'll do. Not, are you the same person that I fall in love with? But the shoe fits. I want you. And this is really the thing with the anxious attached. It's the blueprint fits. I need to have you. I've decided that you are the one that's going to redeem me and give me everything. Now, initially, this works, right? Prince Charming, and they have each other. She's elevated. He treats her like she is a princess. She's not Cinderella. And she shows up and she says, yeah, sure, I'll be this wife of, that you've desperately craved forever. And we'll be so happy together. And then you realise, actually, let's imagine for a moment that they remain unhealed, right? And he accepts her. He thinks he's accepted her the way she is, but actually he's still dressing her up in the ball gowns. Now imagine one day he leaves a cup and he goes, take that into the kitchen, will you? And she is suddenly triggered into, excuse me, I don't work for you. He's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I don't work for you, screw you. And he starts feeling rejected, and now he's like, what are you talking about? Don't you dare. I need some space. Why are you leaving me? And all of a sudden their little bubble is burst, because underneath she still feels like she's Cinderella. And he's like, of all the things I've done for you, I've given you these dresses, blah blah, and you don't have to be that person anymore. And they end up in this same cycle as every other anxious, dismissive couple, one of the most common couples, where the anxious partner is basically desperate, like, do you see me? Are you there for me? Will you love me? And the dismissive avoidant partner, in this case Cinderella, is honestly saying, do you accept me as I am? Because I don't believe that you do. So everything that you complain, all your needs that you have are basically complaints about what I haven't done. So the prince might say, I don't feel very loved. Oh, okay, so now I'm not loving. Is that what you're saying? Nothing I do is ever good enough, is it? I loved you last week. I was here. I did everything that you asked for last week. Yeah, but I'm lonely now, he would say. Oh, okay, so nothing I do is ever good enough. They would just go round and round and round. So in the beginning, the prince basically gets her on the hook by giving the dismissive avoidant this sense of, unlike anybody else, I really see how wonderful you are. I will make you feel seen, more significant than ever. I will make you feel that you're not defective, that you are accepted. And Cinderella will be, wow, I'm really stoic, I'm really strong, so I don't have any needs, I don't have any vulnerabilities, so this relationship can be all about you, which will completely be what you need. And then after a while, the prince will be like, well, you don't make me feel loved. And she'll be like, don't criticise me. And that'll be that dynamic. So if that's you, then fear not, this is the most common dynamic, and there are things you can do to heal and become more secure. Now, here's the beauty of the beast. This is a slightly more complicated one because we're dealing with the fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant combo. Now, everybody thinks Belle is secure. And yet, think about it. Her mum dies and she ends up looking after her dad. And yes, she does have a lovely relationship with her dad, but he also swaps his place as a prisoner in a tower with his daughter. And I don't know many fathers that would think that was okay, that their beautiful daughter would, that's okay to swap and go to prison for him so that the dad can be free. That sounds a bit more parent-child in reverse. So the chances are Belle is actually parentified. So she's experienced a loss, and the way that she managed that was to become stoic and strong and independent. And if her dad went to pieces after her mum died, she then stepped in to look after him. And this is another thing that we see with dismissive avoidance. It's not just cold households that create them. It's also households where there is one person or more with so much emotional need that there's no room for them. Now, that could be a sibling. If a sibling has, physical or emotional needs, or is just a lot to handle, there might be one child that kind of slips through the cracks and doesn't get any attention. And they'll learn to be self-reliant or the ultimate caretaker, because that's what they think their role is, and their needs are unimportant and, paling to comparison with the other person's need. So that, I think, is what has happened to Belle, is that she is a dismissive avoidant, she is parentified, she is devoted, she's learnt to not have any needs because there's no space for them. So she's in that pattern. And then the beast, well, he's lost somebody as well. He's lost his mum at a young age, and instead of having somebody help him process that, his dad was very mean and, aggressive and not very kind. And so the beast has these sort of conflicting experiences of, I feel that loss so deeply that it hurts me. I never want to feel that hurt again. I never want to feel abandoned again. I never want to feel lost. But I desperately want to feel that love again. But the pain of the loss of it was so big that I need to protect myself. Okay, I need to make sure love is safe for me. And the beast is all those behaviours designed to sort of push people away when they feel like, you're going to hurt me. Now go away, don't hurt me. And so to keep them safe, they've developed these sort of push-pull behaviours. So obviously they get to know each other now. The beginning bit of the Beauty and the Beast, she's in prison. So she can't leave him, literally. And that creates a space where he actually feels quite safe to get to know her and to open up and be more vulnerable. And she's actually free not to devote herself to anybody. She's not expected to give a crap about him. And she has nobody. She's done her devotion by swapping with her dad. And she actually gets to have as much space and independence as she likes. She hasn't got to deal with Gaston trying to marry her every 5 minutes. The dismissive avoidance dreams, I'm on my own. He needs nothing from me. He's a big boy, he can take care of himself. I'm perfectly strong and resilient, and he seems to appreciate that about me. So, but obviously, because she is a devotion, she has got this sort of ability to put her own needs aside for other people. That makes her very safe and devoting Eve. So to the beast, it's like, wow, she's actually very kind and very loving. But that's because she's learned that she doesn't exist in the relationship, not because she wants to give love. And obviously his, happiness to give her respect and space is because he's frightened of getting hurt, and because she, he knows she can't run off. Now imagine they get together because they've actually been in each other's company in such a way as they've been able to, a little bit like Nick and myself, there was a sense of, there was an environment where there was no pressure because we were just friends. So we could really open up and be vulnerable and connect to each other, and friends don't ever leave you, do they? So it's safe to be friends with somebody. And that environment, the Beauty and the Beast, allowed them to become this, this friendship. And then he's absolutely convinced when he gives her the opportunity to go, and she comes back. And that's the critical thing for him, is that, okay, she will leave me, but she'll come back. And that's when he's like, okay, she is safe to love. She is safe to love. And for him, the fact that he gave her the space to run away is what then makes her fall in love with him. Cut to 3 months after their marriage. Let's imagine. Let's say a couple of years, and they've got kids. And imagine that she's this devotion, she's devoted. So she's now devoted herself to the kids, and he feels the abandonment. And now he feels that she has left him for the children, and he's complaining about it. And all she's experiencing is the need from the children and the need from him, and she want to pull away even more. And he may have some of those beast qualities come back in anger at her pulling away. So the Beauty and the Beast is a brilliant example of a love story, but one that we've been raised on that's actually quite dysfunctional. So, and I think it's worth having some light-heartedness around these types of relationship, because there's so many other ones that we've been raised on as well, like the Ross and the Rachel, which is two anxiously attached individuals, and that dynamic is fascinating. And as we go through the course, I'll probably use examples of this to help explain it. But underneath, hopefully you can see that there's this dance that we're in, and we'll get to know that dance as we go through. But first of all, being able to answer these questions. Which attachment style do you resonate with most? So obviously there will be some that you resonate with, there might be more than one, but what's the one in your current relationship, or the big relationships, the one with a lot of feelings? What resonates most about that experience? And then we can go deeper. We can say, if you haven't done the quiz, by the way, the relationship quiz, there is a link to that on my website. There'll also be a link in this course to do it as well, which will help you identify it more accurately. But here's another way. So what was difficult about your early caregiver? Now, obviously, let's assume you had two caregivers. So think about one caregiver and then the other one. What was difficult about them? In other words, what did you have to be or do to receive love? So what did you learn through their difficulty that you had to be or do to receive love? Now, obviously, the correct answer is nothing. I didn't have to do anything to be loved. Great. You probably more likely have a secure attachment. But if you felt like there was always something you had to do, so I had to be independent, I had to be quiet, I had to be unseen, or I had to help, or I had to soothe, more dismissive, avoidant. If you had to be good and the best, and you had to be perfect and you had to be loving, then maybe for you that was what you had to do to receive love. What did you have to do to be good enough? What did you have to be or do to be good enough? So that's your need for significance. And when did you feel safest? Like, what did you have to do to get safety? Did you retreat to find safety, or did you embrace, they came back and you felt safe? What did you have to do to feel safe when you were a child? And then see if you can notice your relationship attachment dance. Given that you've got see if you can guess what your partner's attachment style is from the descriptions, and then think, okay, so what's underneath that then? If we're sort of showing up the way that we did with our early caregivers, how is your partner showing up for you, like, or with you, as if you were one of their early caregivers? And that could be the start of a really great conversation, okay? And once we've got a little sense of that, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start looking at your emotional needs, which will give us some clue as to the, not just the flavour of your attachment style, but the very specific beliefs and wounds that you feel in your attachment, in your blueprint. And then from there, we were going to look at how your trigger response cycle with your partner flares up over these kind of core wounds, and ultimately we want to heal those wounds.